Hello.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm excellent, but also very tense.
Tense?
Yeah, man.
Why so tense, chum?
I think this brotherhood that we formed, we've been on this, we've been here for years and years and years. This is one of the most tense episodes ever, every year, because it requires us to look back
And make decisions.
and make decisions.
You know, like that aren't set in stone, but I mean, like, once you
whether
put the
we-
podcast out, it's pretty much.
And whether we want to
Gospel.
admit it or not, we've been working on it each for a while.
Yeah.
Well, you have to take inventory,
Yeah.
and you have to look inside yourself. But you also have to, there's a chance of some kind of possibility or some kind of discovery. And so I feel like the cramming and the rewatching and everything that goes into deciding on my best of the year list is there's always like I know it's coming, and so I'm thinking of all these movies that I want to see and that I've been meaning to see all year, and some of them just end up falling by the wayside. But there's this thought of like, well, what if the best one is still yet to be discovered? So it is very stressful. It's a bit of a relief to finally decide, as I did like this afternoon, okay, I'll be watching no more movies.
Yeah.
What we have is what we have.
I tried to squeeze one in this afternoon and at work, and it was like, this is not working, and it wouldn't be fair to this movie.
Yeah.
Like, just to get it in.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll go back and watch it later. Whatever.
Yes. Well, maybe we'll talk about those at the end of this episode, those potential list busters.
Sure.
I have 3 in mind that I think seem like my kind of movie and that probably would have been on my list or at least would have had a shot. But you never know. Maybe you guys will mention one of these before we get to that point. So,
By the way, you're listening to Movie Schmovie.
I know. And the other relevant question is, who are we?
I'm Ron.
I'm John.
I'm Steve. Yep, that was easy.
Yeah. You know what I
We said the name and our names
Yes.
Yeah.
in succession so easily. Mm-hmm. And yet we still waited, what, like a minute or so to do it?
Yeah.
2 minutes, 3 minutes? I can't count, so...
I think if you do it up front and you're too eager about it, it seems a little desperate.
So we're just more confident.
I think that we have this swagger that allows us to wait until 3-4 minutes into the show before we explain what's going on.
Do you have swagger if you say it about yourself?
Yeah.
I said I think we have.
You're not
swagger.
sure.
So I think.
So
that-
what you're waiting for is someone to be like, yes, John, you
I think
do.
the uncertainty, but also the fact that I grouped you guys in, takes it away from pure narcissism.
For sure.
Is there such a thing as like collective narcissism?
Right.
You know what? Someone is going to invent that term, and they're going to study podcasts as part of their dissertation. But this is our big narcissistic moment where we overthink these year-end lists of the movies that we're going to call the best of the year or favorites of the year. And I don't know, we always talk it up, and every year I think I'm going to be much more ready for it. This year I really thought I had gotten my head around it. This was a good year for movies. There's going to be a lot of movies that don't make my top 10. And yet today I still felt constantly like that little sticky I have that's got my list on it. It was kind of whispering to me all day. It was
Right.
calling to me saying,
Right.
there's still a potential change. Did you guys, I see you guys are looking at your phones right now. Are lists being changed as we
Yeah.
speak?
As we speak, yes.
Wow.
Multiple times. It's a stressful thing, John. We talk about this every year, but I mean, like, I know personally, I like love doing this because like I'm all about the list and I'm all about looking, like you said, Ronald, back into like what experiences we had with movies, watching movies, with each other watching movies, alone, whatever it might be. So it is like, it's very stressful. There's anxiety because I mean, like, I'm like, I got to be sure of this, but there's no way to really be sure because I mean, we'll revisit some of these movies on our list this year, next year, and like I looking back over past episodes, I was like looking at some of my lists and like how they've changed. You know, like a couple years ago, I looked at a list that we did, and like I saw movies again. I'm like, this movie has moved up, or this movie has moved out because it just didn't
Stick with you.
It didn't stick with me the way it did the year I saw it. So it's
Or often when we record, the day or the week that you saw it, you were very
Right.
excited about a movie.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. It's like super fresh, but
It's very fresh.
super fresh. But I don't know, it's just like the kind of thing where like in the moment I'm like, this is really important. I gotta know what these choices are. Because overall, like what did you guys think overall about 2018? Was it a good year for movies? Would you say looking at your top 5 films or top 3 films, would these be films that you would say are some of the best movies you've seen of the last decade?
For some,
I'm going deep. I'm going decade. Maybe the last 5 years. I don't know.
Some of
Where do they place? Do you think there's some in the conversation?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I would say, though, even in a broader sense, though, just my top 20 films that I saw this year are all movies that could have been in the top 10. And I think I've said that before, but it's very true that 11
Right.
through 20 on my list, at one point, every one of those movies was in this top
Cycle
10 that
into
I'll
the
be talking about
conversation,
tonight.
yeah.
So inevitably it becomes a bit more of a curated thing. You think about if there's that many good movies or that many movies that you really liked, you think about what you want to include in your list and giving it a little variety. And I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Do you guys factor that in at all as far as a list that is going to be interesting to a listener, or if the best movies that you saw all year were actually the movies we had talked about on the show and that everyone was talking about, would you feel confident coming in here and reading, like, you know, the top 10 biggest movies of the year, biggest in terms of the broader culture? Or do you feel like you need to have a little bit more of a personal stamp on your list?
It has to have the personal stamp.
Yeah,
I agree.
You know, there's something to be said about how our choices kind of are a representation of who we are in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's why people get so upset when you say, like, you know, Aquaman sucked, and somebody's like, I love that movie, because you attach emotion to
Right.
things. You know what I
Right.
mean? In some way, you like to believe that your taste is okay, and that's why you like it.
Yeah.
And if somebody's attacking that directly, that means they're attacking you, which isn't true.
No, it's not.
It just means that the movie.
But it's a weird moment when you've gone out saying you like something and then someone's like, I hated that.
Yeah.
And they don't even mean it as a slight on you, but you
Right.
feel like, well,
So-
you took something away from me.
Now,
just
when people say anybody that likes that movie is stupid,
Yeah.
I've heard things like that.
Right.
And I've said things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to say that quite as often as I used to.
Well, please say it when we're recording because it makes the show more interesting.
Yeah, man, they're definitely. I have some hard opinions on some things, but I've been trying to ease off of that and be more open to stuff. And that's kind of, my list is kind of, there are a couple movies that I don't think I ever would have put on the list.
Mm-hmm.
But that also has to do with, like, you know, just you guys introducing a whole genre of movie
Right.
that I never knew about until today.
I have a question. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm a fan of a few that I listen to religiously, and, like, you know, when they go through lists or when I'm reading articles about end of year lists, it always, like, I feel like people really start to, like, talk about, and I've noticed the choice of words, like the 10 best films of the year versus my 10 favorite films of the year, or the top films of the year. Like, the top films would be, like, more like ambiguous, like where you'd probably have a mix of both. But, like, how do you guys approach your list? At least this year, maybe it's been different in the past. Like, do you see a distinction between what you're calling the best films of the year versus your favorite films of the year?
Sometimes. Sometimes I see the biggest films that I know people are going to remember. That's kind of what I was talking about before, is that slight difference between your personal preference. But I think sometimes I try to mix it up. Like, there's a possibility this list tonight could have been all blockbusters, all big movies, you know?
I got you. Yeah.
But I think that's not 100% where my heart is in terms of movies I go see. So I think I feel like it's on me to make sure that I'm mentioning the movies that maybe only I would mention here tonight. But I also don't think I have anything on my list that's super deep and super obscure. So I mean, I've seen a lot of other, I don't call us critics, but I've seen a lot of year-end lists by a lot of folks, and I think most of the movies that I would mention tonight are on someone or another's list. You know, I don't have a lot of crazy outliers. I don't know if you have anything that you think is a discovery, or do you feel like it's all stuff that's in the conversation already?
I definitely have an odd one, but I feel like at least one of us has seen it and thought it was a good movie. I don't know where it ranks,
Right.
but there are some, I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, at this point, we can kind of pick out prestige films kind of with our eyes closed. We can just listen to the dialogue from a trailer.
Right.
At this point, just because we've watched so many movies.
Yeah.
There's something about the formula that makes something good that I am adamantly against in some ways, but also, if I watch it and I like it, I can't fight it. I'm not gonna purposefully be like, this is shitty. I'll give you an example. Like, I watched this is not a movie that's like would be prestige, but I watched the Fire Fest.
Yeah.
Both of them. Loved them.
Yeah.
I mean, I have issues with one of them versus the other, but
If our schedule had worked out where we could have done an episode about the dueling documentaries,
Yeah.
that would have been a fun topic.
But I know that I have issues with Netflix. I have issues with certain types of documentaries. I love that fucking movie. I love both of them, in fact.
Right.
So it's like one of those things. Like I have my biases, but I can look past them if I like something. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not banging my fist every time I watch something that I'm like, I shouldn't like this, but I love it.
Right.
So, yeah.
What about you, Steve? You have any sort of surprises, or do you feel like everything is like, if we were betting on each other's lists tonight, do you think your list would be predictable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like when I asked the question like earlier, it's just like we know each other pretty well, and like we know we've seen films together, or we've heard one another talking about movies. We're like, oh, I know, I remember John loved film X and you loved film Y. Like I'm sure it's gonna pop up, you know. And we have like
Those were great films, by the way.
there were hands.
And you know what? You came in with Film Z.
Z, you know, like wild card. But yeah, you know, it's just there's this sense of like we know each other's tastes well enough, but that goes towards saying that we can expect certain things. But I feel like some people make lists kind of with this idea of like I've got to talk about the movies that are probably objectively or as much as you can say objectively are like the most well-made movies or like the best received films or best, not that you're saying this is the like the highest critically received films, because you can look at a number.
It's like important,
yes,
versus enjoyable or something.
That's what
like
I'm
that.
getting at. Like I can watch a movie and I'll say I love movie A, I love movie B.
Yeah.
I love movie A because of like the message it was saying. It really knocked it out of the park. It really kind of nailed it. But I love movie B just because like I had a fucking blast watching that movie. You know, and then when you make a list, in my mind, the movie B is the one I'd probably put on the list because it's probably the one I'm going to go back to multiple times and watch multiple times. I don't know if I'd ever go back to movie A. Maybe, and I'm sure I would still enjoy it. But it's had its impact on me, and I will remember it for that. But B is the one that I'm gonna be like, when my daughter's of age or whatever, or you know, this is the one I'll be like, dude, this movie. Like I remember Daddy was in the theater. Like I look forward to that. Like you talk about with Henry. Like I want that, and those movies are the ones that I feel like I'm more so putting on my list.
I have a lot of B's.
What's that?
I have a lot of B's.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now that I'm
like
thinking about
the
it.
more I thought about it when I'm making my list, I'm like, the B's are what I'm putting on my list. Like there's a lot of films that I love this year that are great movies that I gave great ratings to. That are in the, you know, maybe top 20, 25 on my list. But I mean, the ones that really made the cut for me are the ones that I feel like I would probably go back to, you know, and had some takeaway that was so enjoyable that like they're going to have some sort of holding power, staying power, revisit, like rewatchability, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
But,
Cool.
I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. That's well, that makes me feel better because I definitely have a lot of B's.
Well, I think if we all come to this with this attitude, I mean, it's funny. I had a friend comment that they always enjoy this episode partially because we spend so much of the episode wringing our hands about what it means to make a list, you know?
Yeah.
But I do think that we're guys who don't, like, we're not tastemakers or anything.
Sure.
So what do we have when we do this show except for our opinion and, like, being able to back up our own ideas? And so you just want to have a list that is sort of like your contribution to even if it's just this conversation. If people are listening, I bet most of the movies that we talk about on these episodes are movies that are familiar to sort of film buffs, if they're listening. So we're not really turning people on to it so much as maybe we're pointing a few people in the direction of a movie or something.
Right.
But what can you do except just voice what your tastes are, you know?
Right.
But trusting your own taste and not worrying about whether this is the official list of the most important films released this year. I actually made a note of all of our picks for the best movie of the year since this podcast started. So if you guys don't mind,
I would love to hear this.
for 2011, I was not here, but Ronald James's favorite film of the year was The Artist.
I really do.
And
like that.
Steve's was Drive.
I stand by that.
2012,
So good.
Ronald's favorite film was Beasts of the Southern Wild. Steve's was Silver Linings Playbook. And mine, in a last-minute surprise, was The Gray.
That stands out in my mind.
I remember that.
Still, one of the best moments is how happy you are when I.
I was so happy because it was on my list too, and I was like, "Damn, John just picked it as number one."
But it also
And you saw it so late in the game too.
It started a tradition of me seeing a movie right before we recorded that jumped to the top of my
Made a
list.
play.
In 2013, Ronald's favorite movie was 12 Years a Slave. Mine was Captain Phillips, another late addition to my list. Which I still feel like when I think about that movie, I just think about that one moment.
I regret that so much.
That was so much.
I regret 12 Years a Slave.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, man, I like that movie, but like slavery movies as a number one,
Yeah.
that makes me feel weird.
If it makes you feel any better, we talked about that.
Yeah.
We talked about like that aspect of it.
But I really like that movie.
I know it's really well made.
It's so
Steve
fucking
McQueen
amazing.
makes good movies. Like, and Steve's was Prisoners.
Oh, so good.
Love it.
2014, Ronald and Steve both said Selma, and I said
man.
Whiplash. 2015, I said Room. Steve said Mad Max Fury Road, and Ronald said The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
See?
So Abby, like, yeah.
We were all excited, super
love
excited
that
to have
movie.
Star Wars back.
Yeah,
in that
baby.
I
movie.
love that movie. man.
I do. It's probably my favorite of the new ones they've
It's
made.
good.
Still, 2016, I said Hunt for the Wilder People. Ronald said Moonlight, and Steve said Arrival.
Ooh.
And then 2017, Steve and Ronald both said Get Out, and I said Logan.
Nice.
So it's a good mix.
Yeah.
It's not like we always not one of us always picks the popcorn or the non-popcorn.
Yeah.
So I think
true. That's a good point.
It allowed me to feel much more free about what ended up at the top of my list because I was like, okay, I don't always do any one particular thing.
Gotcha.
But I do think if I'd seen any of those list busters I mentioned earlier, it's possible I would have had another one of those. Oh, I love this movie I just saw yesterday, and it's got to be my number one.
Right.
So I'm glad most of these movies that are on this list are movies I've had a lot of time to ruminate on. So
Gotcha.
I don't know. Does everyone feel good about their past choices for number one, or do you? Is there
Yeah.
anything you would change? Do you think? Would you go back and pick a different one for anything?
Just 12 Years a Slave made me feel weird.
Yeah.
Just looking back on it.
I feel like I had a list. I feel like when I was mentioning when I went back over them, I think there was one. It might have been. Man, I feel like it might have been the year. Man, I can't remember what year it was. I want to say it was the Selma year. Mm-hmm. I think I may have changed. 2014, was that 2014?
It was 2014, and that was the year that in our top 3 or 4, we all three had Guardians of the Galaxy, Selma, and Whiplash.
Yeah.
And I felt bad when I was listening to that. There's like my heart's probably more with Guardians of the Galaxy.
I was saying
than
that's
it is
the one I feel like
with
I
Whiplash.
changed. Like
Yeah.
when I read, and I also feel like I should have had Gone Girl in that conversation.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was on my list, but again, that's a situation where I've watched those movies again since then, and but I mean, I really enjoyed Selma, but Gone Girl was so good.
It was.
I watched that like in the last 6 months, and it was
wow.
wow. But yeah, I feel pretty good about those choices.
Yeah. No, I feel like those are all.
And those would all be movies that would still be, even if they flux a little bit, it'd still be like in my top 2 or 3 of the
Yeah,
year.
same.
I would watch all of those movies.
For sure.
If that was like a playlist,
For
or
sure.
if I went to a cabin and those were the DVDs they had on the shelf.
You rented the right cabin.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Except why do they have DVDs? Am I
Well,
right?
I mean,
What is this?
it's a cabin.
Well, we're kind of pussyfooting around this fact that there's
Start
this,
it off, John.
thing where we got to do.
Do it.
Okay, all right.
Do it.
Okay, I'm making.
10. We're going 10 through 6, and then we're going to discuss 5 through 1 in a little more depth as we each go around.
I'm going to go with my first instinct, even though there's another movie that could have been in this slot, but I'm banking on Steve maybe having this
Okay.
movie on his
Okay.
list. So I sure hope that I
Maybe.
didn't make a mistake. But I'm going to put as my number 10 Hereditary, a movie that I felt like kind of fell off a lot of people's conversations after it hit. I think it was one of those kind of prestige horrors that we talk about that some people debate whether it delivered as a horror film, but I think the big surprise with this movie was it did. It had some really shocking stuff in it, and some stuff that's still hard for me to kind of think about. It's hard for me just to even think about. And then Toni Collette's performance is just earth-shaking.
Yeah.
So whereas there are other movies that are maybe more fun that I would have liked to put in a kind of horror slot like this is a movie that I found myself thinking about throughout the year. And I do think if you're going to have that reference to something being important or something having an impact, sometimes you can gauge just how important a movie is to you based on how much you've thought about it since you've seen it.
Sure.
So Hereditary is in my 10 slot. The movie that's in my 9 spot is a movie that might surprise someone at this table because I don't think you like this movie very much. But the performances in this film and the design of it and the sheer sort of bravado of it, I really think The Favorite has sort of lingered in my memory as yet another movie that I'm going to think about certain moments in it. It cuts close to the bone. It's got sort of an ugliness and a discomfort to it.
Okay.
And those 3 actresses are just
They're very good.
doing amazing work in it. Like for one thing, if you've been an Olivia Colman fan all this time, it's a movie that's really going to, I feel like her name is now on people's lips, and that's something that is awesome. So The Favorite is number 9. Number 8 for me is Can You Ever Forgive Me, which was a very small subject and a very like a sort of a crime story, but a different kind of crime story than we're used to seeing, and it's really elevated by Richard E. Grant and Melissa McCarthy acting off of each other and having this really great relationship and doing very unshowy acting. Like it's a different sort of role for her, but it's underplayed in a way that I think she's maybe starting to do this type of role, but it's what we know she's capable of. And Richard E. Grant, I don't know if either of you guys saw that movie.
I have not.
But it's just, if you know him and you know his kind of style, that sort of dissolute, washed up, kind of drunk Brit guy that he does so well. Like it's the perfect sort of Richard E. Grant performance.
Okay.
In my number 7 spot, boy, this is a hard one, but I'm going to give it to Infinity War, a movie that, for all of its overhype, I think did this amazing, huge thing that very few movies have even tried to do. And when I look back on that movie, and I've seen it a few times, it still works for me. It's got moments that are among my favorite of the whole Marvel shebang. And I think even though we know there's a sequel coming and everyone's up in their head about the ending not meaning anything, I think this movie gave us a year where we got to say, okay, this was the movie where the bad guy wins. Yeah. And I think that'll be unique in the pantheon of superhero movies, even if we know there's a part 2 that's going to change that. And then in my number 6 slot, a movie that I think we all really commented on at the beginning of the year, and it really won a lot of hearts and minds, and it's one of my son's favorite movies, and I've seen it several times too, so I know it kind of stands the test. It's just a pure, simple movie, works on its own rules. I would say don't look into it too much, don't ruin it. I'm afraid of the plans to make sequels to this film, but A Quiet Place really just hit me in a big way this year with its message about family and the importance of kind of protecting that, but also just seeing John Krasinski have this act in his career that I didn't expect to have. He was a very credible action hero, and I thought a really good director. So that's my 10 through 6.
You did it, John.
You did it.
I knew you could. What do you got, Ron?
Why am I next?
I'm just going around the clock here.
Okay. Number 10, Ready Player One. I've watched this movie so many times at this point. It is not the greatest movie. The adaptation from the book, I hate to be this person, wasn't perfect, but it still is a fun movie, and I think about it constantly. Not constantly. Think about it a lot. Number 9, A Simple Favor. A Simple Favor. It was...
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like, just had like Cruel Intentions vibes.
Definitely.
And it was something that, it kind of snuck up on me.
It's fun. I liked it a lot, too.
It just is one of those movies that I was not expecting to be good, and it was so fun.
And they're really good together.
Yeah, the chemistry.
Anna Kendrick especially.
All those characters just really... this small town and all the things that surrounded it I was intrigued. It felt like I was watching a season of a show in one movie, which is really cool. Next one is... I'm going to have to say A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place, because it just felt like I was watching something that I hadn't seen before, done in a way that I hadn't really, the prestige horror thing is, all that really is just horror films being told with an eye that it hasn't been told with, an attention to some details that really hadn't been shown. I just think there's something happening in terms of what's happening with... It's almost like people are like, oh, these movies can have depth to them. These movies can have characters with feelings and, a beginning, middle, and end. And they can change during the course of a film. I don't know why that's been... I'm not saying that didn't exist before. Yeah. It's like more mainstream.
Well, I would say A Quiet Place is almost that. It's mainstream. It's that's an actual mainstream movie that goes right down the middle. Right. But it has the trappings of... Like from the trailer, it had the air of that kind of arty horror. But when you see it, it's definitely like, you know what I mean? It's meant to be a very exciting movie. So I think that movie, you're right. It's almost like arty prestige horror goes mainstream in that movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a horror film starter kit. If you're like, this is something good. It's not too crazy. Yeah. It's well done. That's what I'd start somebody with.
Don't ask too many questions about the premise. Just enjoy they have to be quiet. Just deal with it. That's the premise. Don't ask what happens when they fart or whatever people like to say. What does happen when they fart, Steve?
Number 7 is one of my favorite movies of the year just because it was nuts and kind of all over the place. Stop motion, animation, subtitles, Isle of Dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck, man. I've watched it a couple of times. It's a beautiful movie with a cool message. I really enjoyed it. My number 6 is Upgrade. Upgrade, man. What the fuck was that movie? And it felt like, so Venom was supposed to be this movie. Just to give you the way that Venom kind of carried itself, the like body horror thing. This movie did it 50 million times better on a shoestring budget, and it just was action with comedy done in a way that was so funny and so well done that I really enjoyed it.
I didn't like the film as much as a lot of guys I know, but I think what I did like about it was that kind of offbeat humor.
Yeah.
And the fact that ultimately it's a nasty little twist of a movie too.
Yeah.
That like it's not trying to be. I mean, if it does set up a franchise, it didn't do it by playing nice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that's
definitely.
an interesting approach. And I couldn't decide if his performance was really funny or if they just found a way to use his kind of awkwardness in a way that was funny. But sometimes that's all you need. It's like even if it's just the actor, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
a guy doesn't have to be a brilliant actor to be used really well in this type of movie.
That's my.
I loved Upgrade.
So,
Yeah,
so
that was really good.
So that's my 10 through 6.
All right, for number 10, I have 8th Grade, Bo Burnham's directorial debut. He also wrote it. So, like, just a real quick precursor to my list. I kind of looked through my list, and what I really am loving about it is that, like, there's all these genres in my list that I feel like hit the spot for me in those genres.
Yeah.
Like this coming of age kind of movie, the awkwardness of adolescence into the teenage years, and looking into what adulthood looks like. And, you know, the performance is really great, really subtle, and it's just like you feel this girl's like uncertainty on what the world is and just like trying to find a place in it. One of the great scenes in the film is the pool party scene. I think is just like one of the most uncomfortable scenes of the year on screen. And, you know, I'm sure most people can find something in their life at that time that they could probably draw a line to, you know, kind of compare it. So it's kind of relatable. I feel like everybody's probably had an experience like that. But I think it's just like a really confident, you know, kind of exercise for Bo Burnham. And like he's really spot on with the script's great. And the performance from Elsie Fisher, like who's a kind of, I guess, a newcomer. I don't know if she's done anything before this. I thought was really great. So my number 9 is Blind Spotting, which is starring Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal, who also wrote the film together. Just like a really like straight.
I think the dog just agrees that movie was incredible.
So my number 9 pick was Blind Spotting, which stars Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal.
Yeah, guys, my dog is flipping out in the background, and
He's really excited about Blind
as
Spotting.
is often the case. Sometimes we talk about it, and then you can't really tell on the recording.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling this time it's going to be at least audible. So
Yeah.
but
so we apologize.
yeah, but Steve has to talk about a movie. So
But anyway, Blind Spotting again.
sorry.
Oh my god. Your dog does not want this to happen. Did somebody just come in? It sounded like something. Nope. Maybe somebody's trying to break in. So my number 9 choice is Blind Spotting. Watching that film just felt like there was like a finger on the pulse of so many things happening in this country, and just a way to say some of the things that make it very understandable for someone, you know, that's not in the moment when these things are happening, or I'd say in this film like a victim of some of these things happening. Like it just kind of puts it forth in a way that's kind of, you can't not understand what they're trying to say, you know.
Yeah.
And they kind of present it in a number of ways, like whether it's like a lyrical rap almost that's like in the middle of a line of dialogue, or in just like a set piece, like a party that they go to. There's so many opportunities for you to see what they're trying to say that I'd be shocked if you missed at least part of the message that they're trying to say.
Yeah.
But just great performances. Both of them are incredible in it, I think. And, you know, I'm very curious to see what they do next in the film world. My number 8 pick was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which, again, is like the belle of the ball right now at the end of the year. Just Sony just knocked out of the park with this, you know, chance they took, I guess, on, you know, an animated Spider-Man film when there's another Spider-Man film coming out in 7 months, and one just came out, you know, 5 or 6 months prior, or a prominent role in you know, in the Avengers film. But just everything they did with that film, the voice casting, the whole Miles Morales story, which I was not familiar with, that now I'm super invested in. I just think they did a really great job, and everything just really works well in that film. My number 7 is Ready Player One, which, like Ronald said, I've watched a number of times. I'm not familiar with the source material, so that's something that I heard great things about. But I love Spielberg. I love all the nostalgia tips. I love the bouncing between the digital and the real world, and the choices from going digital versus film, the way the film is shot. And just like, it was very thrilling. Like, it's just like a ride that I went on, movie, and I loved it. And I just think it's something that I would, experience over and over again. Excuse me. And number 6 is Game Night, which is a movie we talked about a lot on the podcast, which I think is probably one of, if not the best studio comedies that have come out in the past 5 years minimum. They don't make them anymore hardly, and the ones that they do make aren't that great or aren't like challenging enough. But Game Night is such a confident, kind of dark comedy noir that kind of mixes some genres up. It looks like if a Michael Mann film was a comedy to me, like just the color palette, the way it's shot, some of the cool sequences that they put together. It's pretty unpredictable, even if you kind of know where the movie's going overall. They kind of find fun ways to kind of deliver these plot points, and just great performances. I mean, this is like a great cast of people that just like really, really provided great performances. Jesse Plemons is probably a standout as the neighbor, but I think Bateman and Rachel McAdams just were great together. And I probably watched that movie more this year than I've watched any other movie that came out. Like, just rewatching it at night, just like going to bed, I'm going to watch Game Night. Right. And I find it really fucking funny. Like, it's so funny to me.
It was really good.
But yeah, so that's Game Night, number 6.
Number 6.
Yeah.
So that brought us all from 10 to 6.
Yeah. So now you're up, man. Number 5.
I need a peanut chew.
This episode brought by Peanut Chew.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Peanut Chew.
Fun fact, the original dark flavor has no milk in it. It gives a warning that it might be in the proximity of milk, may contain milk, but there's no milk in it.
It's amazing.
It's nuts, man. It
has nuts.
As a chocolate wax. It's not with no milk. It's like accidentally vegan. I've been like really looking up stuff that doesn't have dairy in it, because dairy makes my stomach go nuts.
Wow.
And they're nuts. Like peanut chews. Nuts.
No milk.
No milk. So weird.
Accidentally vegan is a good category, because I bet there's a lot of junky shit that just by some fluke
is vegan.
Is acceptable, yeah.
Twizzlers. Accidentally vegan.
Get it.
Sour Patch Kids.
So just like straight up, like sugar.
Just sugar. It's a strange thing.
All right.
Number 5, John.
Number 5. I'm happy to have a Coen Brothers movie on my top 10 list for the year. Cool. And I am happy that it meets that category of a movie that once I saw, it stuck with me. Different scenes in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is an anthology movie that sort of pretends to be based on a book of short stories. And in fact, a couple of the stories in the movie are based on actual short stories written by other writers than the Coen brothers. But they wrote these other shorts that were, I don't know how long they've been working on it, but supposedly it was years and years ago that they first talked to Tim Blake Nelson about playing the role in this film. And they said they'd only written 1 or 2 of the pieces they needed for this movie, but they were planning on it. I feel like it was in the early 2000s or something that they said to him, "We've got this role for you."
Wow.
I don't know if that was so that he could go learn how to spin a gun around and all that kind of shit, and he had time. But so clearly they were planning this for a while.
Sure.
And I don't know, I guess that's relevant to me because it feels like for a couple of guys who make movies that sometimes feel like, oh, this is the latest Coen Brothers movie, and it doesn't do anything to further your understanding of what they can achieve and kind of where their artistic intentions go. This was something that really did feel like a step forward for them, or kind of like then if you've enjoyed their key movies in the past, this movie really did bring something new to the table. It had a bleakness of tone, had a dark humor, had a great cast as usual. But as is often the case, you've complained, Steve, about how when someone's in a Coen Brothers movie, you're like, why did they get so-and-so just for one scene?
Yeah.
But when you have an anthology movie,
it's true.
It doesn't seem strange that James Franco's only in the movie for 10 or 15 minutes or whatever.
Yep.
So it kind of works against that weakness of some of their films, which is that they sometimes feel like a series of strung together vignettes, and it turns that into a strength of this.
Sure.
And I also just like the structure of it. I like the way the book opens up and you see an illustration from the story you're about to see, done very authentically in the style of like an old, illustration, literary illustration. But it'll have a little caption underneath it that is a line that
From
is
that
not
story.
relevant to, you don't know what it means when you first see it, but once you've seen the story, that line will mean something to you.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
even as the story ends, it goes back to the book and you see the end of the story. And if you care to read that, the last paragraph or so of the text, as it turns the page to the next story, will give you a little shading or a character idea or something that's not quite in the film that you just saw. So it's kind of also
That's cool.
built for like, streaming pause culture. And I don't know. I just feel like this is a really cool movie from them at this point. There's definitely issues, but it's less like an issue maybe, but it's more like it starts a conversation about, say, the way that indigenous peoples are depicted in Westerns. This movie takes a very standard usage of those Western tropes.
Right.
It didn't feel like it was politically incorrect or politically correct. It just felt like it was not doing anything to try to address that.
I agree.
Which could be seen as a weakness in 2019 to deal with those tropes and not comment on them. But anyway, some great sequences, great segments. The one that I think about the most, which is perhaps the darkest, is Meal Ticket with Liam Neeson. But the gal who got rattled is a really great yarn, and that's another piece that does not go the way that you would expect it to. So yeah, just a good Coen Brothers movie, which to me means a lot, and beautifully shot. And the fact that it came out on Netflix, it was just like a little gift. The Coen Brothers movie was out, and I didn't have to be envious of people in New York and LA. I could just go to my couch and watch it. So, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, sitting safe, slot number 5 for John Walker in 2018.
Signing off.
Over to you, Ronald.
Oh god, my internet's acting weird. Okay, so this is number 5.
Number 5.
My number 5 pick is, I think, first-time director Jonah Hill's mid-90s. This movie is 1990s Los Angeles. A kid, he's 13. He meets this group of kids and kind of he goes through the skate shop and then he befriends them, and it reminds me of how it was to be a kid in the 90s. It's unfiltered. The language is kind of jarring if you're not used to hearing it in movies. It feels like a documentary more than a film. The dialogue feels very natural. It just is one of those movies that reminds me of kids, the way that I felt about kids when I first saw it. It was just like, what? This piece of America that wasn't exactly like my childhood, but I could relate in a lot of ways.
Right.
I was one of those kids that would just get up with my group of friends, go away, and I'd come back in the house and I was panting because I did something that was probably illegal, probably ridiculous. I broke something. I broke a window. I did something. I sped down a hill with a scooter, and I almost got hit by a car or something like that.
You rebel.
Yeah, and it's something about that feeling of being a kid and, having these brushes with danger, and it kind of developing your boundaries as a person. You kind of realizing who you are through these experiences and wanting to become a part of a group. And then you realize, maybe I'm not the loser I thought I was. Maybe I'm not as low on the totem pole as I thought.
For sure.
And there's something about people that can make you feel special, even though it's traveling around skateboarding, breaking a law. There's something really, this movie has a lot of heart, and it kind of comes together in a really cool way towards the end.
Well, when you mentioned it has heart, I was going to ask, is it the kids of this era? But if you're saying it has a lot of heart, to me it feels like Kids was a bit more acidic and acerbic and kind of difficult. Is it in that zone, or is it? I mean, is it a little warmer and fuzzier than Kids, or is it pretty unpleasant?
There are parts that feel very unpleasant because it's a lot of like, your masculinity is not really a thing. You know, kind of something about it, so you replace your discomfort with homophobic slurs. Right. So it's a lot of that, like, don't touch me. Yeah. Don't hug me. Don't look at me like that. It's just a lot of that. And it's a lot of people, I've read that it just makes people uncomfortable, but that is what kind of being a little boy is, as you're trying to develop. And I think that's, I've never seen anything done like that before. I mean, not even not to like, when The Wire covered the kids in the city. That part was never covered quite as well as this was. Jonah Hill captured something. And it's not perfect. I don't think that any movie really is, but it does capture adolescence in a way that I just haven't seen before. So yeah, that's my pick.
Mid-90s.
Mid-90s.
All right, Steve.
So my number 5 is probably the most underrated movie of the year, I think, that basically nobody has seen. I think John has seen it. I don't know if you've seen it. American Animals.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the most underrated movie of the year. I think that what Bart Layton has done with the movie is kind of done this amazing thing where he's telling this feature film version of a real story, where he's mixing actors with the real subjects of the true story, and even having them interact with one another. And there's like just amazing stuff working with the ideas of memory and recall and like the unreliable narrator, and just this awesome story that like somehow makes an art heist, which is kind of like a, you know, sexy thing, you know, even more interesting. You know, like these kids basically in 2004, I think it was, in Lexington, Kentucky, basically decided to steal these rare paintings from a library at their university. And this movie is about that, about their planning of it, about how they researched how to do it, basically with a Blockbuster membership, you know, and thought that they could pull this off. And there's just some really cool filmmaking decisions being made. I mean, he also wrote the film, but just on multiple viewings, I kind of like was wowed by it the first time. And I loved what this filmmaker did with the documentary The Imposter, which also kind of plays with this idea of like the real fictional stuff. I mean, the real world stuff mixed with some reenactments. But in this case, it's actual like actors acting it out.
Right.
Evan Peters and Barry Keogh are just incredible in the movie, especially Peters.
I know, amazing.
He's incredible. Like he's one of my favorite performances of the year. But it's just like that. It's like that slick, like crime caper mixed with like a, did this happen this way? You know, and seeing the real subject walk into a scene and out of a scene and talk to Evan Peters in the scene. And like they're talking to one another, the guy he's playing, about like, did that really happen that way? Like, you know, how would you play that? Like, it, you know, it's like, there's a weird thing happening that just works. And I don't know if that's a thing that more filmmakers will do with movies in the future, but if so, like this is maybe a new kind of genre of film. But yeah, I'm a sucker for like a great crime caper heist kind of movie, you know, and the fact that these were just you know, dudes in college who thought they could, you know, selfishly thought that they could make this work. Is just like a really cool story. And I think that the filmmaking behind it really is what makes the movie work. And I do believe it's like the movie that I feel like people need to see. Like I recommend it to as many people as I can, because I feel like most people would enjoy it. If you're down for that kind of movie that I just described, you know, kind of like a thriller. You know, it's a thriller. I was engaged the entire film. But yeah, American Animals number 5.
Yes, I was hoping that would be on your list.
That was that the one?
That was one of those.
Okay.
One of two that I played that way. That I was like, okay. No, I agree. The way that played around with the mix between documentary and the fictionalized version of the footage, and the way that it addressed the way that even this very small crime that you would like to think is kind of a fun sort of victimless crime, it addressed the human cost of that in a way that was very surprising, the way it worked into the movie, because you were both surprised to see the crime itself unfold and realize there was this human cost, but also to then use the same way they'd been using the documentary aspect of that to bring that issue of their culpability and what actually they had done. So yeah. It was allowed to be a little disturbing. I heard people say that they felt that those guys got off the hook. The movie let them off the hook, but I didn't really feel that way at all.
I did not. Either.
I feel like
I think we talked about this on the podcast. I don't understand that criticism.
Yeah.
I mean, just because they were able to participate in a film, and like one of them, I think, is a filmmaker now. I think Evan Peters' character is a filmmaker.
Right.
Like, you know, they served time. I mean, like there were serious. I mean, I guess that's the problem, is what you feel like serious is, and or the ability for them to be a part of this and be like doing press tours and like, you know, like, sure. I mean,
well, I guess the idea that someone has done their time, I know that things are going to be different for them after they get out, but I do think that we should consider that.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
If someone has served their time.
Jail time is crazy. I don't know why that's always perceived to be like a cakewalk. They should have. Jail time is jail time. I don't.
Your life stops, and it's changed.
Yeah,
forever.
I don't know why
Made a bad decision, guys. Like these guys made a really bad decision,
Right?
And you can tell, like John said, like in this film, it does address like how it affected their lives,
and they seem embarrassed.
Yeah,
like they don't
for
really
sure.
seem like they're celebrating. I think the movie allows you to think that maybe this is headed for a sort of that kind of nihilistic approach to the crime, but at the end, everyone involved seems to realize that what they were doing was stupid and ultimately crueler than they realized.
I assumed it would be. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, my number 4. This movie kicked my ass so many different ways. Mission Impossible Fallout. One of the biggest action movies I've ever seen. We definitely talked about it on the show. So there's not much to say. I mean, we've talked about Tom Cruise up and down the street. We know that we're just waiting for the bad headline about this guy before we suddenly can't put movies like this on a list. But as far as like going for it and again, just gluing me to my seat, blowing me back in the theater, everyone was so into it. It was either IMAX or Limax, but it was a giant screen.
Yeah.
And I saw, the fact that my wife and my son were both there, and we were all sort of equally excited to see this movie. It just had us in the palm of its hand from that great opening sequence where they pull off this little trick on the audience as well as on one of the characters. But to that final fight where it's Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise and their characters' hatred for each other coming out in this never-ending bit of fisticuffs.
Yeah.
On a cliffside. I have no idea what they're going to do in the next 2, but the fact that they're doing the next 2 Mission Impossible films kind of back to back makes me think there's going to be a little bit more of a story or some kind of a continuation or something, because they're going to be one year after the other.
Yeah.
But also it's changing the series, because this will be. I mean, Christopher McQuarrie has now written and directed 2 of these, and he's going to be doing 2 more. So it's kind of turned into the Christopher McQuarrie series. I don't know what you guys think about that, but just in general, it's different than what they've been doing. But obviously, they have something that works. Obviously, Tom Cruise likes working with this guy.
Yeah, they've done a lot together. So
they really have
like a good relationship that is obviously working. So I'm for it.
And even though Fallout did seem like, in a way, how can you top that? I don't really want them to try to top that. I don't know how they try to top that. Maybe it's by going smaller. Maybe it's by going leaner. But this was, the big summer action movie that you hope for. And I'm not even like, it's not always action for me that gets me going. But this kind of explosions and punching is my kind of explosions and punching.
Yeah.
So, Mission Impossible Fallout.
My number 4 pick is Mission Impossible Fallout. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, it's really Mission Impossible Fallout. Now, this, I don't know. I think something's happening in terms of just movies in general, right? So to combat everything that's happening with like these amazing prestige TV shows, I think there's a concentration on developing these stories that feel very intimate but big.
Right.
The scale is kind of crazy. You know what? This is a weird comparison. Total Recall, the surprise sort of thing that Arnold Schwarzenegger did it all movie. Ha ha! He just kind of be behind somebody and shoot him. Is what this movie did to me. It's like it was a surprise after a surprise, and it didn't. I think that they can go crazier. I think they can get more interesting. I don't think,
but not Fast and Furious crazy.
No, yeah, you're right. So I'm thinking just in terms of just how insane the story can get in terms of where he stands with whoever he's with or against. And I kind of like the idea that at any given moment somebody around him could die or that's a scary. I think that's something that they never get into with action films. Like seeing him dwelling on his past and some of the things that happened and relationships that failed. I'm like, what? They're like really honing in on something that I just hadn't seen in these sorts of movies, these big popcorn movies.
Yeah.
And I felt it. I was feeling some of the like flashbacks he had, some of the like weird nightmares he had. It just was a really well done movie. And
well, Tom Cruise is also currently doing his version of "I'm getting too old for this shit." His
Yes.
character is showing the bruises and being knocked around a little bit and stuff. So it is a little bit like this is the maturation of this franchise, because hopefully with this last movie they move beyond that whole he's got this wife or ex-wife that he still loves, and he's kind of watching her from the shadows. I feel like this movie, Fallout, seemed like it was trying to say, we've just reached the conclusion of this franchise up till now. Like, where can they go now? But I do think creating him as a character who's not split between two lives, or not so full of regret, maybe having him looking forward is going to be a plot difference, because this movie really was almost like it did look back, and it even brought back Ving Rhames. You know what I mean? It brought everybody back really into the fold for a big role.
And they're doing something with Tom Cruise that I'm really enjoying. It's like he's not better than everybody. He's smarter than everybody. And that is something that's really cool, because like if you're fighting somebody that clearly is up in the same level of intelligence but stronger than you, you got to outsmart this person, because he's going to beat your ass, find a way around it. I think there's something really cool about Tom Cruise not being the strongest man in the room anymore. Him figuring out ways to beat people that are stronger, better than him. That's really cool. And I think there must have been something that crossed the table when they were writing it. He's like, look, I'm not the same person I used to be. I'm still in the best shape of my life, but that doesn't mean these people could be like, if this man came at me, he'd probably beat my ass. So I have to find a way to beat him that it doesn't involve me fighting him head on. That's something cool about that, man. I think seeing that stuff happen with him is a sign that maybe he's starting to understand that, like, that's what makes me cool. Not that I'm stronger than everybody. Not that I can beat everybody up in the room. That I'm the smartest guy in the room.
Well, you know, it's like maybe Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise working together. It's got shades of that, like Lawrence Kasdan writing Indiana Jones for Harrison Ford, where there's like a humor inherent in that character that if you have the right person bringing it to them, there is a world weariness to certain heroes. And there are certain people who it's like, you know, it's like that moment when Indiana Jones reaches for the gun when the guy's got the sword. But it's like you want that hero who, like you said, it's not going to always be about being the big strapping hero. Sometimes it's just like barely getting out. And I think Tom Cruise, in his intense, amped up way, he's starting to play a little bit that joke of just the guy who's tired, the guy who's been through the shit. Like this movie had that joke where he's debating how he's going to jump out of that window and across to the other roof. And Simon Pegg is, you know, like sitting at the computer and giving him tips about where to go. And he's like, what are you waiting for? And he's like, I'm jumping out of a window. Give me a second. I like that they seem to realize that. Like the last few movies, they seem to know that we all think it's kind of funny and kind of cool that Tom Cruise is actually going to run down a runway and jump onto a plane as it's taking off, you know? So, no, I think that gives the series a little bit of juice. But I just worry that this just means Tom Cruise is going to die filming a stunt for a Mission Impossible movie.
that's what
they
I'm
keep
afraid
signing on to do more.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved it.
My number 4 is Stars Born. This is like the big movie that, like, you know, coming out of the summer through the festival circuit was like, oh, this is the Oscar frontrunner or whatever. So, I mean, it had tons of expectations with it. Like, I can't say that I was initially like super stoked on it. Like, even last year, hearing about this big remake of the film again, and Bradley Cooper making his first film as a director and having a hand, I think, in writing it. But man, I feel like I was like just something washed over me watching the movie. I feel like the scene in the film, which is in every trailer, so it's no, you know, not that it matters anymore, but spoiling anything, but like there's just amazing chemistry between them in the film. It is completely confident as the first film, as is his first film as a director. It's gorgeous. The music is incredible. Their chemistry is great. But moment-wise, the moment in the film where she comes on the stage and sings with him for the first time, like I just felt like something wash over me. Like I was emotional, I had goosebumps, and like just the build to that. Some argue that the movie peaks there. I might entertain that thought. I mean, I think it doesn't end as strongly as it kind of gets to that point. Like their meet cute and like their time together in the supermarket and the parking lot and like their quick relationship by the time he gets her on that stage is all incredible stuff. I love the music. I think the performances are great. I think I like Bradley Cooper is just amazing to me. Like I think he is incredible in the film. Sam Elliott is so good. Lady Gaga is really good as well. Like I feel like performance wise, like I don't love her performance in the movie because I mean, I don't know. There are moments in it that I love her in it, but overall, I feel like there were parts where I kind of didn't. I was taken out a little bit where I could not see Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Especially when she takes her turn into this like pop star world. in the movie, but
You know, Beyonce was up for that role.
I feel like I did read that. Yeah.
He like was very close to picking her, and then it
Wow.
kind of fell apart. Random.
It must have made
Interesting.
Kanye mad. You know, he would have been like,
He was so pissed about it. On his
gonna
press
let you
run,
finish, but-
it came up a couple of times, especially the
Yeah.
Hollywood Reporter roundtable.
Yeah. I definitely have read that. But I don't know. Like, it just was the kind of thing, and watching it again, like, it kind of just sticks it for me. Like, I just feel like it's kind of that. It's got that old school Hollywood. Something just works. Like when you get a good story with really great chemistry between your two leads. And it just takes off, man. And I feel like the cinematography in this movie is like low key, like underrated. Like
It's really good.
It's really good, and I think it's Maddie Labatique that did the cinematography for it. But it's gorgeous, man. There are some shots, like even just like the blocking, like when she does that scene coming on stage, and like the sequences when they're doing the rides across the desert, and he goes out to look at the property with Sam Elliott. I just think some of the just visually, the movie is gorgeous. Like. And you know, last shot of the movie is like just knocks it out. I mean, like it just ends so well, and it's got that last shot where she just looks up at the camera, and I'm just like, done. I just loved it.
Yeah.
So I say what I said earlier about it being like the front runner because I'm really curious to see what happens with it when the Oscars come around because it doesn't seem like it has maintained all that buzz that it had through the fall. Maybe for some categories, but. You know, I just say that it's got that romance that I love, like in movies that really feels real, and it just like it feels like just like a shotgun romance that just like something just took off with these two people, and you feel it from the moment they meet. There's a shot in that. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Ronald? The sequence in the movie, like when he touches her nose.
The parking lot scene?
No, they're at the nightclub in the beginning of the film.
Oh, okay.
I think they're in the nightclub still. I'm 99% sure. But it's just like profile shot, and this musical cue kicks in. It's like this like soul R&B song, and it's slow. It's fucking sexy, man. And like that moment, it's just like these two are in it for something. Whether it's good or bad, they're in it for something. And I totally bought it in that one shot. And
Parking lot scene was one of my favorites.
yeah, it's great. It's really
when they
great.
start to connect, when they really start to like talk for
Yes.
an extended period of time, I'm like, man, this is like.
And like he like gets her the bag of peas or whatever. Like, you know, like there's like little things that just are so small that I think just work so well for them. And like you really do just buy. I mean, at least I do. I buy that chemistry, and I think it's just like fireworks. From that moment in the nightclub to the parking lot to the on stage, even the bad moments like that, their chemistry together, like when they're fighting or something bad is happening. It's just like fireworks to me. I just something there. It just works so well, and that just sails through the film.
this is
for
such
me.
a Steve movie. I remember when we first saw the trailer for this, and I remember,
yeah.
like I not that I didn't think it looked good, but I remember thinking like something about the fact that it involves music and it's got this sincerity and this kind of heart to it, and I don't know, it just seemed like it was like one of those things where I was like, unless this stinks,
right.
It's like it ticks some of your boxes.
Totally,
you know what I
does.
mean?
Absolutely.
But no, I think it is interesting to see the way that front runner status. Maybe that happens more often than I realize, because it seems like I've been thinking about that the last few years, where there's a movie that early on seems like, oh yeah, this is the one that everyone's talking about, and then by the time it gets to that year-end conversation, something has changed, or it was out too long, or maybe there's other things that actually were more Oscar baity that were waiting in the wings and we didn't know about.
Right.
All right, guys. My number 3 is a movie we've already talked about on the show and that Steve's already mentioned, so I'm not going to belabor the point that Game Night is a fucking great movie. It's so funny. I mean, it's like if you've ever liked Jason Bateman, this has got Jason Bateman doing maximum Jason Bateman. The super great timing, great quips. His chemistry with Rachel McAdams is incredible. She's always someone I enjoy watching because she does something a little different, a little intense, and I guess she's been really funny in things before, but I don't remember seeing her have maybe someone to bounce off of that it worked quite as well as this. But the chemistry, she's very funny in this.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the way I felt when I kind of discovered how funny Rose Byrne could be in Neighbors.
Yeah.
This just felt like a great part for Rachel McAdams. I like stories, even though this movie does try to do a little bit of the whole what's the problems within this relationship as part of the story, but it doesn't overdo it. In so many movies like this, I heard someone say that there's a misconception that couples are at their most interesting when they're fighting. And so many movies are made where you feel like the screenwriter's job is to say, well, this was a happy couple at the beginning, so they can't be a happy couple at the end.
Sure.
I do think it's rare to see an adventure that a couple goes on, and the movie's not about whether they're going to stay together. Again, they tease that a little bit in this movie, but I don't think it really feels like a big deal.
Yeah.
This is not a movie about problems coming out between them, or one of them being bad and one of them being good, or them meeting someone else. This is like a couple that goes out on a caper together. And I love the fact that the point of the movie is what a team they are, and how they can kind of tag each other in and out of situations, and they've got this competitive spirit. It's just such a great, funny, well-observed bit of character work, the idea of that type of people that take this gaming thing really seriously. It's kind of like taking a list of best movies very seriously. But and then, yes, as you mentioned, Steve, just the jokes are actually funny. The set pieces are actually creatively put together, and the whole cast is great. Is it Lamorne Morris?
Yeah.
Is that his name? So great. So good in this, and so funny. And Kyle Chandler having a blast playing kind of a sleazeball. What's his name? Billy Magnuson?
Yeah, I love him.
Oh, man.
He's so good.
And he's perfect in this. I mean, he's just absolutely perfect.
He's in a lot of stuff that he's really good in.
Yeah, he's kind of popped up.
He was really good like a couple years ago when he was in The Big Short. Remember him in that? He was really as like that real estate agent.
He was on Maniac too this year. Anyway, it's just
it's great.
You said
Love
it. It's a great comedy. It actually holds up. I want to say they don't make them like this anymore, or they used to make more comedies that were just good, solid, kind of middle of the road comedies. But yes,
maybe in the 80s.
I've seen this 3 or 4 times now, and I'm still finding moments. It's great when you've seen a comedy that many times, and instead of going, oh yeah, 3 or 4 times in, a comedy is not as great. When instead you're looking forward to your favorite gag again, it moves at a clip. It finds a way to somehow have a joke that ups the ante of the story, and maybe it flies off the rails a little bit with the twists on twists, but I feel like that is also part of the joke.
It is.
Totally. And then, you mentioned Jesse Plemons. The great secret of this, his line about how is this profitable for Frito-Lay? But I like that's it's just a great character.
That's pretty funny, man.
I would say that the glass joke is the one that kills me.
Oh yes,
he's like, what does he fucking
glass
say?
tables are acting weird
tonight. The glass doesn't break.
Yeah, 2 times in a row. The second time he's just like. But anyway, it's like
that delivery is so good.
So often in a movie like this, though, they have characters that aren't really funny or lines that don't really work, and you just know it's supposed to be, and you kind of go with the flow. But this was actually clever
and the Denzel
funny
joke.
Yeah, that's great.
I need to see it again.
Oh, I love it.
I've only seen it once.
When you saw it, you were like, "Tell me how much you loved it." I couldn't wait to see it, and Aaron and I were dying watching it, and it was just so funny, so funny. So yeah,
and again, I already said that it's got a nice pace to it, but I think part of what it does that's really great is it doesn't that's what that second, third viewing reveals to you. You know those movies that you watch a second, third time and you don't get bored.
Yeah,
you're like, oh yeah, this moves. This scene leads to this scene, leads to this scene, and there's not a moment where you're going like, oh, this is the part they have to kind of move this forward. It's pretty steadily funny. The characters are all great. I'm forgetting the name of the British actress, but she's got some great stuff in this off of Billy Magnuson.
From Catastrophe.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm spacing on her name. Anyway.
I forgot her. She's funny as hell.
I mean, we got her name. That's just rude. Hold on 1 second.
Are they having another season of Catastrophe?
It's on now.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, it's 2 episodes in.
Luther also started back up, speaking of British stuff. Luther.
It is Sharon Hogan. That's her name. She's great too. Yes, Game Night. I mean, I think it'll be one of those movies that years from now.
Agreed.
I'll be watching it again and again.
Cool. This is my turn. All right, my number 3. Animated Sony. How could this work? But it did. Spider-Man. Into the Spider-Verse. It is one of my favorite movies of the year. It's just beautiful. Miles Morales. Spider-Man is one of those properties that's been forced down our throats. Not every version has been good. And, I've kind of said to you guys in the past that I'd love to see an animated Marvel movie because DC is kind of killing them in that way. Right. It's a weird thing that, DC is winning in that universe of animated
I remember you sitting right here saying, guys, mark my words, when they start making animated superhero movies, like big ones, it's going to change the rules of what they can do. And you don't have the concern about the CGI that's bad. That's one thing about all the Marvel movies that I think is that with the exception of maybe a couple, the CGI is going to age badly just for a couple
Yes.
years down the road.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, and with if you're animated top to bottom, you don't have that problem.
Yeah, nothing looks rubbery.
Yeah.
Like that's nothing.
It all at least blends.
Yeah, this is just a well done movie with some cool techniques that Sony's actually trying to trademark. Now I don't know what the hell it's gonna mean in terms of the future of animated stuff that they do, but it just has its own thing. It's really nice to have a movie, especially animated, when everything is like kind of trying to imitate Pixar.
Sure.
Trying to imitate Shrek, essentially trying to imitate Pixar or Shrek,
Right.
and it has its own place. It has its own
Or
thing.
try to be photorealistic. Like
Yeah,
they're getting
yeah.
better at doing like nose hairs or
yes,
whatever. You know?
and it's becoming its own thing. This feels very unique. The humor is pretty amazing, and you find yourself laughing because a lot of animated stuff isn't very good. I don't want to name some names about animated stuff that came out that wasn't funny this year.
Just name one name.
Grinch.
Just like, he wasn't even waiting.
Yeah.
It just wasn't as funny as it could have been. I don't know.
I haven't seen it.
But you should see it.
I will.
It's not that bad.
I will.
You will be like, oh, what?
I was like, Ronald really shit on this movie.
It's not fun. But yeah, it just feels like it's its own thing, and I can't wait to see what they're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sad that they're gonna do more stuff with it.
I know.
Just because it feels very.
It's interesting because, like, I think it's I get it, and I kind of agree with you both. But I feel like it's a good thing for the brand only because, like, me coming out of this film, and again, I agree. I thought it was incredible. Like the not being the comic guy of the group. Again, I'll say it every time we talk about comic books. It's like I pretty much have had this idea.
I'm beginning
or
to think he is a comics guy, Ronald. He protests so
under
much.
radar, yeah. Like,
Have you seen all the Marvel movies?
Yeah.
Yes.
More than once?
Yes.
Nah. Okay.
Okay.
But
Even Thor: The Dark World.
actually,
Seen that
maybe
twice?
not that.
I was gonna say, I haven't seen that one
I don't
twice.
know if I've seen it twice. Or Iron Man 3.
I fell asleep.
Or
I don't
Iron
think I
Man
actually
2.
saw that one once. now that I
Yeah.
think
Yeah, I
about
get it.
My point was that I think that even not being in the comic world growing up or even as an adult with these films coming out, it's like I've gotten this vibe, or like I feel like it's a commonly understood thing, or people kind of maybe agree on this point that like Spider-Man might be one of the more relatable and most relatable superheroes out there. But I feel like with this film and maybe what they do with these films, it like I think there's no question about it now that like the character of Spider-Man, whether it's Peter Parker or Gwen Stacy or Miles Morales, whoever it is, in these worlds that we
Or
see.
Spider-Pig.
Spider-Pig.
I can relate that.
Like Spider-Man Noir, or whatever it is.
Spider-Ham.
Spider-Ham.
Spider-Ham. Like, it just, that was a big takeaway, is that, like, the fact that Spider-Man can look like anybody,
Yeah.
like, that's a fucking awesome.
really
Like,
cool,
how
man.
do you not find something to hold on to with that character and be like, we can make it for everybody? And they kind of did in this movie already,
Right,
in a
right.
way, but, like, they can expand on that, so it'd be kind of cool to see what they do with that.
Absolutely.
So...
Cool.
My number three is a Marvel movie. Is actually Avengers: Infinity War. Yeah, man, I fucking
Number
love it.
three?
Number 3 with a bullet. I've watched this almost as much. Actually, maybe I don't know. I've watched this movie a ton. I don't understand. Like, if you have criticisms about the film, I totally.
I have so many.
I respect your opinion and I love you, but I don't understand how, like, what they accomplished with this film is like it's unheard of. Like, just laughing now about Thor: The Dark World, or I'll say Iron Man 2, like movies that we don't think are good movies, but somehow, like, the ship has stayed on course enough that it's come to this film, or this film and the one that's coming out in 3 months or 2 months from now, which, by the way, wow.
Yeah.
Two
I know.
months and change.
I know.
What-
yeah, so close. Craziness.
Seems like they have another movie between now and then.
They do. They do. But
So close.
I don't know. Just the fact that it gets to this point, I think it's just like what Feige's done, what the Russo brothers have been able to do by taking over the Captain America films and doing what they've done with the Avengers film. I mean, it blows my mind. Like, I don't understand, like, on a level of franchise, IP, cinematic universe, character building, character involvement, I feel like almost everything works perfectly in this film. Like, for almost every character on the screen, it really does. And
Isn't it weird? So many people criticized it for characters getting lost or having too many characters. But when I saw it, what I thought was remarkable was that they did serve so many different characters in so many different ways. Not that everyone got like a major arc,
Right.
but it did feel like a legit Guardians of the Galaxy movie and an Avengers movie that crashed into each other, and somehow Josh Brolin was the main character. But
Right.
like,
That's it.
It did that.
That's the point, yeah.
It did that, and it's like that is so strange that they pulled that off, and that all those characters felt true to themselves, and all the actors showed. I don't know. So I feel like the achievement of it's hard for me sometimes to not just mention that how unlikely it was that it turned out as good as it did.
Yeah.
But that is a huge thing. And I mean, I know you were disappointed.
Yeah.
But to me, to not feel that way was already just amazing. And it's like every scene, every character that interacted with a new character, there's this electricity you feel. They have been building up to this. And they can't do that every time. And I agree with you, Ronald. I don't want them to always have to be so big and always be hyping the next big thing 3 movies down. But as a culmination, I was surprised at how well it delivered.
And that's what it is. Like, that's what blows my mind, is that it is a culmination, and it works. And I feel that it works so well. And, you know, as the story moves around and you have basically 2 storylines happening with our 2 leads of the universe, you know, with Iron Man and Cap doing 2 different things, and, you know, and Black Panther's brought in after how huge that film was. And there's just so many things that matter. And I just feel like, yeah, the characters get their moments. I feel like, you know, the course correction that they've done with Thor in Ragnarok, you know, carried through to this film, and arguably Thor has the moment of the film, like a goosebump moment.
Thor
like,
and Rocket and Groot,
like fucking, like it's amazing, you know. And Cap has his moment where he comes out of the shadows and he's holding off the gauntlet. Like, there's just, you know, this is like, you know, I just said it, but like, I'm not the fanboy, but fuck, if this movie's got me turning into a, I'm the cinematic universe fanboy. Like, I am so invested in seeing what happens with this story, regardless of who we think is going to live or die or whatever's going to happen.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about its existence as a single movie?
I'm fine with it. I really am.
Like, are you able to do that thing of saying, because that's been my take all along, is like, at the end of this movie ended this way, and if I didn't know what was coming next, I would be now just dealing with the consequences of this movie.
This is the movie where the bad guy won.
Yeah.
That's what I look at Avengers Infinity War as. They lost this.
Right.
This is it. I mean, that's what I see this film as, personally.
And even if they're undoing a lot of that, and we know they are,
That's
the
the
fact
next
that we
movie.
got a whole year to feel that way, it's like, I don't know. Like, to me, that feels bold, even though I can understand why some people say it doesn't mean as much as the hype would suggest. I do feel like that still is bold to leave people in that space for a year.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're also like acting like you don't understand what the source material of these comics are.
Right.
Like, these guys come back how many times in what iterations? Like, it just happens. But you deal with that issue, you know, when you experience them, when you guys were reading them, you dealt with that experience on the page as it was. Even if you knew a year from now they might come back. Yeah. You know, just like this film, I just felt like this was a movie, like you said, John. It's Avengers and Guardians crashing in. Thanos is the main character. He wins.
Yeah.
He wins. He succeeds. And people are gone right now.
And the other thing is, people act like the fact that we know they're coming back means that they just have to hit a button. But you know the whole point of the movie is going to be the cost.
Oh, for sure.
I would say anybody who didn't turn to ash at the end of the last movie is who you need to be worried about.
Absolutely.
In the next movie.
That's who you're most concerned about.
Right.
Yeah, no, yeah, man. Yeah. I loved the movie, the Russo brothers. I think just their ability to juggle all the storylines, all the characters, everything that's been set up over the past however many movies, 20 plus films, I think it is, or around 20 movies. It's just, I think it's a huge feat. And I think the direction is great. I think all the performances are really like the characters are the characters now. And I mean, like, and they're together for the ultimate team up of what the cinematic universe is. And you know, in this film, you know, Thanos, Josh Brolin, I thought was incredible as Thanos. The capture was great. His performance is great, and you know, I bought into it 100%. Cool. But yeah, I can't wait to see Endgame. Obviously. Yeah. So that's my number 3.
All right, my number 2. We talked about this movie after we saw it. I don't know if I've talked to you since you've seen it or if you've seen it, but If Beale Street Could Talk is coming in at number 2 for me. I mean, Barry Jenkins is a guy who's got this knack for showing... this is going to sound strange. Maybe not. He's got a knack for, like, showing faces, for, like, lingering on someone's face while they're dealing with something and while they're feeling something that's sophisticated and complicated. And the fact that he is a black director and he, of course, is telling stories that have maybe not been told at this level... the fact that those faces are faces of color that we're seeing on screen, filmed in this lush, like, if Bill Street Could Talk is a lush film. It's a beautiful film.
You don't see that.
It's got colors. But I mean, it's soulful and deep, and it's about love. And I think when we talked about it before, what I said was that, like, and this is definitely what I take away from that movie, is that somehow, even though this is a movie where bad stuff is happening, it's not a movie about how life sucks. It maybe is a movie about how everybody's up against something, and it's very fractal. Like, it's like one person's point of view, and you really believe in the righteousness of their mission. Like Regina King has a plot line in this where she goes to see someone, and you feel her mission. Yeah. And you feel why she's going to do it, but you instantly see how she can't really pursue the things she wants to pursue because of the humanity of the other person she's going to talk to.
Right.
Without being too vague, but anyone who's seen the movie will know what I mean. It's just devastating. And the fact that there is a little bit of a mystery. We don't know exactly what happened. In this film, there's a guy who's incarcerated, and it seems to be wrongfully, but we don't really know. And I think that adds to the feel of the movie. I mean, it really seems like he got a raw deal, but the movie never comes down and shows us the night in question. It never comes down and says, well, here's the proof that someone else did it, or here's the real culprit. So we're left with this thing that feels very messy and feels very much like life. And the overriding thing you take away from this story that does have prison and accusing someone of rape, and it's got all this crazy stuff in it. It's got fireworks between two families that don't necessarily get along 100%. What you really take away from it is the love of these two characters. And both those performances of the leads is just, I don't know, it's just so sweet. And I think that's the thing that I love about this movie, is that with everything else you could say about it, it's extremely sweet. And it's very open-hearted. And man, Barry Jenkins is so sincere. Like, what he can do with just a close-up of somebody and lingering on them, knowing what they're going through, knowing what they're thinking. It's, it happened a lot in Moonlight too, where you just feel devastated in a strange way just because it's life, it's humanity. And I think he's, a really interesting guy. And if you've noticed, I don't know if you follow his Twitter, he's one of the most positive people in the whole film Twitter world.
Yeah, he's great.
If Bill Street Could Talk, my number 2.
My number 2 is If Bill Street Could Talk.
Woot!
Crazy. Look, man, without getting too crazy emotional, I love Barry Jenkins. Everything he does is pretty incredible. It's made with a lot of love and emotion, a lot of pain. He's like one of the directors where you can tell that he's experienced something. You can't really put your finger on it. You're like, man, there's a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. Somebody that understands, like, that faint feeling of, like, man, well, we've all experienced love in some way or another, right?
I haven't.
And you know that barrier between you and you eventually getting with that person. Mm-hmm. It's normally something huge that you have to overcome. I hope that it's never prison for anybody. Mm-hmm. But you know that feeling of sometimes it's distance. We're sitting across the glass looking at somebody or talking to somebody that you can't get to the way that you want to, or they might be dating somebody you want. You're like, fuck that other person. I want to date this person. Right. Or time, or just shit not working out the way you want it to. He captures that in a way that I'm a big fan of Barry, and I got to meet him at some point. I feel like I was in close proximity of him, and I was like, but I'm gonna meet him and tell him. I don't know how he's gonna react to it.
I'm sure he'd be very kind.
But yeah, man, like it's like a painting. It's like a moving painting that is really hard to describe. It's feelings. Mm-hmm. Like some people see in colors. It's like the opposite. Like you see these colors and they emit a feeling. I was so sad watching that movie, but I was so happy because you knew that, like, after you got out of the jail, they were going to love each other the same as they did when they first met.
Well, there's that one scene where she goes to visit him, and it's I do want to mention their names: Kiki Lane and is it Stefan James,
who's fucking amazing.
But that scene where she goes to visit him in prison, and he's got shit going on, and he's not very nice. He's kind of angry with her. Mm-hmm. That scene, like, that's a scene that could happen between any two people in a relationship. But when one of you's in prison and you don't get to see each other that often, you just feel it makes, like what you were saying, is like as an obstacle to your love. Right. Prison is a pretty serious obstacle. But the fact that it doesn't flinch away from that fact, but you
Right.
still end up feeling like it's about the love, it's about the relationship. I find that to be such a. I don't know that another
man.
director could maybe work with that material and have it not feel heavy-handed or
Yeah.
have it not feel grim or something. Yeah.
That scene with the kid, the property manager, James Franco.
Oh, yeah.
Dave Franco.
Dave Franco.
Man, when he asked him why he was helping him, and he's just like, something about loving people that love, or loving love, or
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, man, that face that he was making when he's talking to them, that's just a really good.
That scene's so cute.
Yeah.
Where they're like acting out.
Trying to convince.
Like, help me carry the fridge. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh
That's
man,
that's so
that
sweet.
like killed me, man. Because there's always that, you're with somebody and you're trying to help them understand something that you see, and it's just it's nuts, man. This is a really well done movie. So, if Bill Street Could Talk's my number 2, also.
Still, Steve.
My number 2, I think John has mentioned it. I don't think you did, but Mission Impossible Fallout.
All right.
Mish.
We all have it in our top 5.
Yeah,
Man, Tom Cruise, fucker.
so good.
I mean, he's like the biggest movie star of all time.
Yeah,
Like,
and he's one of the few now
he's
that
like,
you can still call a movie star.
He's one of the last movie stars, man.
He doesn't.
Like,
He's not a guy
really
who
is.
stars in movies. He's even though we know that he doesn't open everything.
He doesn't.
This is his franchise. This is the franchise
He's
that
got
he
a
opens.
franchise that is arguably peaking at 22 years old.
Yeah,
That's fucking crazy, man.
That's nuts, man.
To have that in your filmography is one thing, but to be Tom Cruise with that in your filmography is another.
Yeah.
And to think that this is a franchise that he almost kind of gave away, like when they were making Ghost Protocol. Mm-hmm. It was basically like setting up Jeremy Renner to take over the Mission Impossible series. It didn't happen, and I'll say thankfully, because I feel like Tom Cruise is like the action star that I just love to see. Now, that said, I will make a point. I'm super, super stoked on like the back-to-back Mission Impossibles with McQuarrie and Tom Cruise. But I do want to see Tom Cruise do other stuff. I
Yeah.
think he's a really good actor. I think he's really kind of underrated as an actor. I love a lot of his dramatic work. I'd love to see him get back to that. So get the Top Gun 2, get these out of your system, make them great. Go out as the action star that you are, but then let's come back around and do some of your highest quality work.
Yeah.
Let's see that in 2023 maybe.
yeah.
But as it stands, Fallout I think is like the thrill ride of the year for me as an action film. It's one of the best action movies I've seen in a long time. Maybe Mad Max Fury Road keeps coming up, and I mean that's great company to be in.
Yes.
But bringing fresh blood in, Henry Cavill I think works great in the movie. Like he's awesome. The bathroom fight sequence is amazing. Reloading his biceps. I mean, it's a meme now, but I mean, it's such an awesome fucking scene.
What I love
It is so good.
is that watching Justice League, everybody wondered how it could possibly be worth it to have kept that mustache.
Yeah.
That to make it so difficult, like isn't fake mustache technology simpler
Yeah.
than
Right.
mustache erasure
Yeah.
technology? But when you see the mustache
Yes.
in Mission Impossible, you're like, there's no way this could have been a fake mustache.
Yeah,
It would have
yeah.
looked so bad.
Yeah, no, you need that mustache.
And it's glorious.
yeah, it's amazing.
And he's a beautiful man.
He is gorgeous.
But no, I think, and what you were saying earlier, Ronald, about the guy. I mean, Henry Cavill looks like he could break Tom Cruise over his knee, at least in this
he nailed
film.
it. Ronald nailed it. Like he's
and-
not smarter than Henry Cavill's character.
But I mean,
I mean
again-
he's smarter. He's not
He is.
stronger.
He's
Is
not
what I'm gonna say.
But it's like the Indiana Jones thing, where it's like they always had him going up against a bigger
True.
guy too,
True.
And he definitely is like, I'm about to get the shit kicked out of me if I don't figure something out. But I think that it's great that Tom Cruise again that he's playing that. I don't know, everything about this. You're right. It's amazing that it's on the 6th movie and arguably the best in the series.
Yeah.
And potentially with room to get better if you've got the same team saying, okay, let's go make something crazier. I don't know. I don't know what I want from the next one, but I'm kind of with you. I'm excited to see them ride this wave.
Yeah.
But it won't seem special if they just keep doing it. So I really wonder, do they have something big in mind
I
with
think
these
these are-
two movies back to back?
these
It's
are the
going to be
last
kind
two.
of a story.
yeah,
Yeah.
these are the last two. I'm very confident. But I mean, so many. I mean, any of these action set pieces, any one of them in any other film, you'd say that was a great action movie.
Right.
Probably, if as long as it was a good film, you'd be like, that was a great action movie.
Yeah.
That
But
helicopter
you've got
chase
like
at the
5
end.
of them in this movie. You got the motorcycle, the armored car heist that leads into that.
Yeah.
You got the bathroom fight sequence. You've got even the nightclub fight. You know, when they're in the after the bathroom. You know, after the bathroom, when he meets what's the actress's name from Downton Abbey.
Oh yeah.
Whatever. That sequence I think is even cool because you're learning a lot in that sequence about her and him. But I don't know, man. This movie works so well, and this is one of the top experiences in theaters this year for me.
Yeah.
Like these films that I have in my top, 5, whether it was Stars Born, Avengers, this film, what my number one is. It's just there's something to these are the arguments for like I got to be in a theater and watch this movie because like seeing that movie in the Dolby screen at the AMC here in Columbia rocked my world, and then I saw it again at the Owings Mills on their nice screen. I mean, it is amazing to watch on the biggest screen with awesome surround sound. You're feeling the punches, you're feeling the speed on these bikes. Yeah, man. I don't know. I just feel like their duo is like one of the best duos working in movies. Maybe like when you look at some of the other stuff they've done together, even I don't know, Edge of Tomorrow and like things like that. I just feel like they're onto something. Mm-hmm. And Tom Cruise is a movie star who's making kick-ass action movies that are like bigger than they've ever. The franchise is bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah.
In 22 years. And that's amazing to me. And again, I think it's one of the best action movies I've seen in a long time.
I think the secret ingredient is Wolf Blitzer.
Yeah, Wild Card Blitzer. Yeah,
man.
That's what you got to add to your movie is the Wolf Blitzer. The one sequence also that stands out is like him visualizing the sequence when they do the armored heist where he would have to maybe kill somebody.
Yeah.
That I thought that sequence was awesome.
And you believe the movie's gone that dark.
Yes.
Just like at the beginning.
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to say anything else.
Yeah.
But there's moments in this film where it goes one way and not the other, and you are prepared to believe that this movie has gone as dark as it's ever gone, that the series has ever gone. Yeah. And yeah, that's again, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the next one. Maybe you're right. Maybe they're going to close it out, and that would explain why it's going to kind of a 1-2 punch. So.
That'd be cool if they did. I hope they do. Yeah. I mean, like they're gonna. Hopefully they continue to be successful, and obviously this was big enough that they can do 2 at a time.
Yeah.
And just go full tilt with it, and I think that's like something to be said for Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Full tilt. Like you keep saying, what else they're gonna do, but.
Well, we both said jokingly the moon and a volcano. And I've seen other people making that same joke. Apparently, those are the two things that everyone's like, well, wait,
what do you want to see Ethan Hunt do?
What can we stick Tom Cruise into in the next one?
One last thing I'll say, like, I don't really believe there's anybody trying to make entertaining movies as much as Tom Cruise is. Yeah. Whether you like Tom Cruise, like whatever you feel about him as a person in the world, outside of being an actor, whatever, like I value everybody's opinion on it. But like this dude is trying to entertain the shit out of you.
Nobody's trying as hard as Tom
Nobody
Cruise.
is trying to tell you how entertaining movies can be than Tom Cruise.
He even put out that super dry thing about turning off motion smoothing on your television.
Do us a favor.
I really wanted it to be like self-aware or funny in some way, but it was so dry.
Yeah.
That just makes it. Yeah, he's so sincere, I guess, and potentially creepy, but who knows? Scientology is a mystery to us all. We'll never really know.
Mystery.
Yeah.
My number 2 spot. Mission Impossible Fallout.
Right. Well, my number 1, by process of elimination, you guys know, it's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, the movie that just does it all right. It's like it was fun. It was beautiful. It was humorous. It had heart. I mean, real heart. Like watching it, I've seen it 3 times in the theater, which I don't do. I saw it once with you guys. I went back with my son, and then we cajoled my wife into going. So I've been back to see it again and again. And each time there's moments that give me the feels, that give me the goosebumps. It juggles the emotional territory so well. Jake Johnson's performance as a version of Peter Parker that we haven't seen before is really nuanced and really good. But he's got some great moments. And the moment in the movie where he realizes that Miles Morales is going to be the hero and he's going to be saved.
Yeah.
And he lets that happen is honestly one of the most moving moments in the film, because the idea of how is this Miles Morales' movie when you've got all these other Spider-Men around. And the first time I saw it, I had that question of like, could that have been more of a Miles Morales movie? Is that the only drawback to it being a Spider-Verse movie? You got these other versions. You've got Spider-Ham, you've got Spider-Man Noir, you've got Spider-Gwen. I was like, is this like would I have liked to have just seen a Miles Morales movie that got a chance to be his movie before they went ahead and told this story that the message of it is, as you said, Steve, that anyone can be Spider-Man. But seeing it a second time and then a third, they do a beautiful job of both those things. The point of this movie is that anyone can be Spider-Man, but in this movie, in this world, they come down firmly on the idea that Miles Morales is Spider-Man. They use comic books on screen as a motif to show people's origin.
Yeah.
There's a really triumphant moment in the film where you see like Miles Morales when he finally assumes the mantle and you see like his comic book cover.
Yeah.
I mean, I get goosebumps just talking about it.
It's incredible.
So the idea that, there's a moment where, it's Peter Parker says to Miles Morales, like, I'm not going to let Spider-Man die. And Miles Morales is like, well, I'm not going to do that either. And they're both looking at each other and it's like, who's going to be the hero in this moment? The fact that this movie is concerned with that idea and concerned with kind of introducing this new, young, different sort of character into this role of Spider-Man, super iconic, all of that works.
Yeah.
That makes it a great comic book movie, great superhero movie. The fact that this movie visually pushes animation forward and is such a technical achievement is what makes this my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah.
It hits both things. It's as good of a mainstream movie as I could imagine, and it's as though they let a bunch of like animation students loose with
go
a
wild.
studio. It's so
Yeah.
creative and inventive and edgy, and it pushes the borders. And this whole thing about them maybe developing the technology to use with other movies, I hope that means other movies will have a similarly layered approach to how they achieve their animation, and not that other movies are just going to look like this one. Because that's my only thing with them franchising this is, as much as I want to see more movies that have this dynamic style, this movie is so special and so unique. I wonder if that will become old hat if they keep doing it. Now, I'm sure they're not just going to repeat the exact style of this movie, but that's the only thing I worry about with them adding on to it, is that it's kind of a perfect movie, and it kind of exists in the space of being super mainstream, super like swing for the fences with 4-quadrant entertainment, but also like kind of an art film. No, I love this film, and I can already tell it's going to be one of those that's going to grow with me as I watch it again and again. But I've already done that. I've already seen it 3 times and verified it was really something special. So there you go. That's my year. I'm just going to leave now. You guys want to finish the episode?
Cool.
Turn the lights off when you leave.
So my pick, man, it runs deep, obviously, because representation matters. And so I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to read Octavia Butler and sci-fi. She used to tell me about sci-fi that involved black people. And I was like, what?
What are you talking about, Mom?
What the hell are you talking about? And using a continent, a fictitious place on a continent where you have roots, and understanding the idea that as a black American, you can only really trace your roots back to the continental U.S.
Yeah.
And having this place depicted in this beautiful way, and hearing stories about how beautiful Africa is, and aspiring to go there, because I'm going to go there. Got to get some shots.
Oh, you're planning already?
Oh man,
That's great.
I got plans. I actually did some ancestry work. I found out my tribe. I did a lot of work, and it all was inspired by this movie.
Sweet.
Black Panther changed the course of my life, and I know that sounds crazy, but what it has to do with is the idea that, like, up until this point, every comic book that I read was essentially about a person who I can relate to in small fractions of pieces of things that didn't look like me, that didn't necessarily have the same issues as me, but I could relate. I never dismissed it because of that. And having a superhero come along where people kind of had to do the same thing is a strange thing. And have it being treated fairly, have it being treated with care and money, resources that made this thing look beautiful, and ushering in a generation of kids that it's okay. I saw white kids dressed up as Black Panther. The cultural phenomenon of Wakanda, and hearing it as a thing, a place, people trying to book flights there, is proof that this movie had a cultural impact on a level that I wasn't expecting, to be completely honest with you. Because I knew it was special. We all knew it was special in some way.
Oh,
But a politician, superhero / leader, just all these things that just, I don't think there could have been a better introduction to a superhero. The Civil War introduction into this. Honestly, Civil War is like one of my favorite movies ever. I mean, like it is. I don't think you can give me a better superhero movie than that. And then this comes along, and I'm like, holy shit. Black Panther is a really important movie, man. And whether you like it or not, this will usher in. It's like the Matrix effect. Just like leather-clad things, or we're gonna see a bunch of movies.
For
where
sure. Totally agree.
It's like
You're so right.
These movies are like
the influence is like deep already.
This Afro sci-fi thing that's happening, and I think that. I mean, I can't tell if it's gonna be like just a temporary thing, but for whatever it's worth, the fact that my dad was alive to see this movie, and also see Obama, and also it's like all this stuff that didn't happen before that's happening now. Super important, and I think that it's cool to like. If you didn't like it, that's fine, but please understand that something's happening. Representation is happening, and we need more women. We need more minorities. It's so important to have figures that look like you on the screen. But I'm telling you, to not have it means that you start seeking things out that don't necessarily, I don't know, represent you quite as well as it should.
Well, no, it's amazing that was this year.
Yeah,
like when you look back to February, it's unreal that movie came out this year, because I feel like it's a classic film that we've been talking about for 5 years or something.
I thought it came out 2017.
Yeah,
I was gonna name something. Then I'm like, that's it.
Well, I'm really glad it's on your list, because I hate to say when Infinity War, it was kind of jockeying.
Yeah, I get it.
I didn't want to have both of those on one list, and I kind of tilted towards Infinity War just because of the sort of the achievement, the unlikeliness of what they were able to do. But I do think Black Panther, it exists. It's a perfectly constructed film for what it was trying to do. It's like a really good, really unique, a really different origin story. And so I think what it has that Infinity War doesn't is its unquestionable ability to kind of stand alone as one movie. It doesn't try too hard to connect to other things.
Yeah.
And it's made with real style. Like Ryan Coogler definitely made a Ryan Coogler movie in the Marvel mold, which is like that's not nothing, you know.
The fact that he's in Infinity War, that's Black Panther movie to me. There's something about, all these characters are in these movies. Like, it just is so cool that he's in Infinity War, Civil War, his own movie. It's proof that he had an impact in a way that I could not have ever guessed. You essentially saw him in 3 movies in the shortest amount of time that I've ever seen.
And that appearance in Civil War was geared towards making you excited as hell to see him in his own movie. And then after his own movie, when he pops up in Infinity War, it's got this sort of like, we love this world, we want to get more of this. No, it's amazing what they were able to do. I agree.
Man. So I guess in a way that I did like that movie, in the way that he's there, and it's so anyway. Yeah, that's my pick.
Cool. I don't think there's a movie this year that had more of an impact than Black Panther.
Yeah,
I mean, across, like, we talk about the quadrants of the movie-going audience, like, everybody embraced Black Panther.
Yeah.
And what's important about Black Panther also from an industry standard is that the fact that it made $1.3 billion worldwide shows that there's an audience worldwide. For films led by people of color, whatever that might be, or films like, Crazy Rich Asians comes out this year and is huge worldwide.
So good.
Like, there's these movies that are coming out that aren't just succeeding domestically.
They can't use that box office excuse anymore.
That's my point. This is a superhero film internationally led by pretty much an all-black cast, made by a black filmmaker, written by a black filmmaker, soundtrack basically curated by a black hip hop artist.
Hip harp. That sounds like a good subgenre.
Yeah, like put a little harp in there. Like across the board, you look at this and it's a success no matter what metric you measure it against worldwide.
Yeah.
So that means something to what you're saying earlier about it's going to have an impact. It's going to have a place as saying this is probably the movie that starts a massive change.
Yeah, right.
And
Absolutely.
that's exciting and that's
super
important.
Exciting, man.
I really like the film as well. I had issues with like the third act of the movie. Some of the stuff in the third act kind of gets a little.
It was the CGI.
That's it.
Aspect of the third act that kept me Like it.
Yes.
I think that's what gave Infinity War the edge, was that if Black Panther's, if it had just been a good fist fight between Killmonger and Black
I know.
Panther.
Kicking each
So
other.
much had worked with Killmonger and with T'Challa that I didn't need that level of the CG blowout action sequence. I would have been fine with seeing it had it been done a little better, but I would have preferred. Yeah, it's kind of bad to say that, but I mean, because for so much of the rest of the film, it's just wow.
It had that texture and it had that.
This is so great.
Yeah,
there's something special happening here. But yeah, I mean, this is the movie of the year.
Yeah.
If you just say what's the movie of the year, it's Black Panther.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nothing touches it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Kind of like Get Out was. When you got to the end of that year, you'd be like, what movie generated the most ink, the most think pieces, the most surprise, whatever. So yeah.
Yeah.
No, Black Panther, huge.
My number one movie of the year, you both mentioned it already briefly, is A Quiet Place.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
I should have put a bet on it.
Yeah. Did you think that was what I was going to pick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially once we got to about midway through, as
it hasn't been mentioned yet.
Each turn you didn't mention it. I was
Yeah.
I know Steve didn't forget about it.
No, definitely didn't forget about it. Again, circle back to this point of the genre and the theatrical experience and seeing this movie in the theater. Great marketing, great delivery of material from not a first time filmmaker, but because John Krasinski has made some other movies, but this is his real shot at a mainstream movie. But I just think the movie accomplishes everything successfully because of the emotions that it carries. I think what it does so well, it succeeds at because of the family in the film. Sure, they're husband and wife in real life, Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, and they're adorable and they're great people, it seems. But it works well in the film too. The kids are great. All the performances are great. It's got the angle, of the no sound, they hunt us by sound, these things that hunt us that are coming into this world. And I think it does a great job of just giving you enough to understand what is happening, sort of, but not worrying too much about giving you rules or giving you the backstory of what happened. Because maybe, I don't know what they do with the sequel. I'm not super excited for that, but
Yeah.
You see enough to see that there are other people going through this thing in other parts of this geography that you're given. The run-in with the man in the woods and the lights that they see go on. Just things like that. You get a sense of the world that they're living in, and you get little things here and there, on their little wall board about news articles, and the one thing you need to know though is that there can be no sound.
Yeah.
And they must continue to live as a family with that one rule. And watching that family navigate that with the challenges that they're faced with, with what happens in the film, and a gut punch of a first 15 minutes of the film completely rocked me in the theater. I think they did an amazing job, when I say of the marketing, to not give something away, which was very well handled. But yeah, I mean, it's the family that makes that movie work.
Yeah.
Navigating a child who is deaf is really interesting point in terms of plot for what this family has to already kind of do in life,
right.
And kind of gives you an idea of that's an asset in ways for them to get where they're at now. Dealing with a wife who's pregnant, and how that works
In that world too.
Yeah, in that world. But again, breaking it down to scenes, the scene when Krasinski and the son are out doing their little errand, and things happen on the farm, and Emily Blunt has to give birth to this child. I mean, man, I was on the edge of my seat for most of this movie. I was not eating food. I was not drinking my drink. I had nachos that went cold in the theater because I was scared to chew on them.
Well, because everyone would hear you chewing.
I know,
too.
and I'd be that asshole that
Yeah.
was you got to be quiet. I mean, for a movie with no sound, there's amazing sound design in the film that really, really enhances everything that you're waiting to hear or think you hear.
Yeah.
And but that sequence when he's running back and and she's lets out that scream and the gun goes off and the fireworks go off, everything is just so well orchestrated to build to this amazing crescendo. From that point forward, we have no sound and you have just all the sound,
Right.
And just seeing what's happening all at the same time on screen, I think is just amazing.
Well, I mean, it's like movie magic. It's doing
genuinely
something
magic.
that cinema does. You know,
totally
it
does.
really is. That moment you're talking about is, yes, I was like, that. Sometimes a movie has a moment where you can go back and go, oh yeah, the movie completely had me at that point. Like I was so, the power of that. Him running back, her doing what she's doing, the kids kind of playing their roles or being in danger on their own respective storylines. Yeah, what a film. Yeah, and that ultimate message, you know, in some ways we were comparing Black Panther to what Get Out was able to do last year for obvious reasons. Yeah. But I thought at the beginning of the year, I remember feeling that A Quiet Place sort of existed in that Get Out spot because it was a genre piece and it came out early in the year and it had like even though it didn't have maybe a message that resonated with people like the social thriller aspect of Get Out, that whole idea of the family and just that line, who are we if we can't protect them? I mean, if you're a parent or aunt and uncle or an older sister or brother who's taking care of somebody, you've had that thought of like, okay, well, if there's one thing I should be able to do is create a bubble for this innocent. And in this world, in this movie, that's not an option, you know, and seeing them wrestle with that is deep.
I know.
And the fact that they're really married, I do think, I mean, sometimes that's a little bit of a trick, but I think in this case it works in a way that doesn't cheapen it at all to say that they were performing those scenes together and you know that there had to be some connection or something that makes that, even if it's just for the audience, it lends some power to it to feel like they're people that actually are solving that problem, you know, with as a family themselves. So
yeah, I mean, I just think everything works so well with the movie. And you know, even watching it at home, I feel like it still delivers like that thrill. You know, even with whatever TV you're watching it on, I think that shtick or whatever you want to call it, like the sound design of silence is like. Saying that out loud, it's like what? Right. But then when you watch this film, you really,
whoa, Steve, man,
you really feel, you really feel the moments when you do hear the sounds, when you hear the waterfall for the first time, and you feel like how important that is to the story and what that introduction in terms of that sound element means for the child who's learning this, and us as an audience is learning, you know, this. You know, not that that's not obvious in your mind, but like you're watching them realize it in their world, and the child learned that in his world. Yeah. So, and to circle back to, you know, scenes, we talked about this, remember when we saw it together, but the last sequence, the last shot of her with the shotgun. Right. I mean, like game on, right? I mean, Emily Blunt, badass, like let's get it. But I don't know, man. I love it.
That is one of the reasons why the idea of a sequel seems superfluous to me, is because it's got one of the greatest endings of the year, if not the ending of the year. For me.
I would agree with you.
And that's something I love, especially in a genre movie, is knowing when you can go to black and the audience has the information they need to picture what the next few minutes is likely to be, without necessarily having to show it and show the aftermath and everything. So, all right, what a year.
Yeah. So what do we all have? We all had. Quiet Place.
Yes.
Spider-Verse.
Yes.
Mission.
Yep.
Yes.
And is that it?
I think that was it.
Those three. Wow.
Ready Player One.
You guys had Ready Player
One. Oh, you didn't have Ready Player One?
And then you and I had Infinity War, but he did not.
And you and I had American... No, you didn't say American Animals. That's right.
Yeah, that would have been... American Animals would have been like on the list for me. It would have been right on the list. So would Overlord... hung in there.
My number 11, 12.
For a really long time.
Yep.
Paddington 2 hung in there for a really long time.
I had Widows just outside of my list.
I was going to put Widows too.
What was the other one that was right there? Overlord, Widows, and... Oh, did you see Minding the Gap?
Mm-mm.
No.
Documentary on Hulu? Oh, man. It just missed my list.
Oh, really?
It's like a skateboarding doc on Hulu about like young men and like fatherhood and influence of your parent. I don't want to give too much away, but watch that when you have a chance. Really cool. Minding the Gap was great. It got nominated for an Oscar this morning.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really great. So yeah, Minding the Gap, Widows, Overlord, I loved. Beale Street was just outside of my top 10.
Yeah, Black Klansman I thought might be on there, but that was another one that just once the list started growing, it fell out. Well, I mentioned before what my list busters would be. These are the ones that might have made my list that I didn't see. 8th Grade, Leave No Trace, and First Reformed are all movies that just from what I heard about them, and I was really hoping to see them before this, but I'll try to see them soon. So,
did any of us see Roma?
No.
How crazy is that?
It's right in
We
our
haven't
laps.
watched it, and it's literally available at any second. I
it-
tried to watch it twice, and I just couldn't. I
Is
couldn't.
it bad that I'm not that interested? I mean, I hate to say it.
I'm having
felt the
trouble.
same way.
I'm glad this is a safe space.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
I tried to watch it twice now. I'm having trouble watching it. I just don't. I don't have a hook for this film. Like I can't.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that
admire
it's beautiful.
Cuarón,
And,
yeah.
Right, and it does like the idea of it being a story that seems to be an unconventional story or a story that you don't normally hear. I'm for all of that, but as
Yeah.
far as viewing choices, that's one that has gotten kicked down the road in favor of something else.
Yeah.
Including some things I had already seen.
Right. Right.
Did
So-
any of you see We the Animals?
No.
It's like a coming of age movie about two kids.
You saw it?
Yeah, I
Just
really
outside
like
of your list, or
just
really
outside of
good?
my list. It's probably gonna be like 10.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, okay,
it, man.
2018.
yeah.
See ya.
See ya. So I guess what's next is maybe in a couple of weeks we'll try to have a preview episode out. It won't
Yeah.
quite be like a spring preview, but maybe we can talk about movies that are coming out in February, March, and April. That seems to be, what is that season? That's kind of like half winter, half spring.
Pre-summer.
Sprinter.
Yeah.
Sprinter.
It's a sprinter preview.
It's interesting because it's technically warmer. It gets warmer and warmer as the years go by. But man, into this winter is the coldest I've been in a really long
Yeah,
time.
like the last couple days.
It
it's
is so
suddenly
cold.
Single digits.
Well, I saw someone the other
Insane.
night. They posted like I don't know why people are saying it's so cold. The temperature just doubled in the last hour, and they were showing how it was like 3
to 6.
degrees, and then it went to 6 degrees.
I saw
Yeah.
that. I saw that. Or some variation of that.
It's like feels like negative 17. Like what?
yeah.
But just to get ahead of this, folks, Steve goes on vacation from February 1st to the 10th or 9th.
Yeah.
And then Ronald's going to be gone from the 9th through the 16th.
We totally planned that.
So hopefully we'll have a new episode out on the 8th. That will be something we've managed to grab in the next few days. If
Yeah.
not, and somehow the winds of time blow us apart, we'll be back in mid to late February somehow. But hopefully...
we'll be back by the time Endgame comes out.
Yeah. We'll be back before the end of February, hopefully. But probably in a couple weeks. But this was our big
But
catch-up.
worst case,
Yeah.
Endgame.
Yes. Worst case, just if you don't hear from us between now and then, you know
That's so crazy.
we're going to be talking about that because
Like,
we have to at
yeah,
least
yeah.
settle our ice cream wager at the end of this movie.
Oh, shit.
If more than one major character is dead, which I feel like is
Right, right.
likely.
You
then-
both take me to lunch?
No, Ronald
to
takes
ice cream.
us.
Ronald
Yeah.
takes us to
Yeah.
ice cream, right?
Yes.
Ice cream. Where
And
are we
go-
going?
we can go to
Charmery?
The Charmery.
Oh,
Charmery.
we could go to
Charmery's right
Charmery.
up the road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Charmery.
There's a new one, right?
The new Charmery.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
This is brilliant.
Yeah.
That is.
I can't wait.
Now you have
so
something to
good.
live for.
End of April, ice cream.
Yeah.
Here I come. Because either way, I win, right? Because
Yeah.
I get ice cream
Yeah.
either way.
And they make
Because
it
it's between you two.
Yeah.
They make Charmery extra warm too around this time. It's kind of amazing.
Wow.
This is like the best time to get ice cream.
It's too bad it's in April, though.
So toasted. I was still gonna be.
What's this? It's going to be something.
cool.
It's going to be weather.
It's still gonna be.
The weather is weather. Well, that's it, man.
Yeah, we just finished looking back. Our last 3 episodes. We
That
said
was
we would do
2018.
it.
That's it.
We wrapped
Yeah.
it up. Now
moving
we're in
on.
the present,
Moving on.
looking forward.
Now we're
Looking
back to the
forward.
future. It's like this is the most nonsensical title until today.
We went back and we're back. Okay, got it. Got
Get
it.
back to the.
We went in the past and now we're back to the future, which is really the present.
Yes.
The past future is the present
Yep.
now.
Yeah.
Got it. Well,
Go back in
movieschmovie.com
time.
is where you can find all of our past episodes as well as any podcast platform that you probably are listening to this on
That was a
already.
tongue twister.
Yeah. But whatever you listen to this podcast on, whether even it's streaming on our website, hit the little share button, hit the little link, copy it, paste it somewhere.
Tell people.
Send it to a friend, somebody you think that might.
Send it to an enemy.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Just be like, ha. Just say, ha, and then send the link.
Just send it to an enemy and make them into a friend.
Oh,
Ooh,
right.
That's our
conversion.
promise.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's our
works.
goal for 2019. Use Movie Schmovie to convert enemies
Yes.
to friends. Okay,
I
I'm
think
down.
that can help
I'm
a
down.
lot of people.
If we could do one, I'd say that's a success.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, challenge accepted. Yeah, but if you can't find us on your preferred platform, if you're listening to us somewhere because you can't find us somewhere else, like to subscribe to, like if you're streaming this maybe on Facebook or YouTube, tell us where that platform is so we can figure out how to get on there because we want to be there for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're there, we should be there
Right.
with you.
Absolutely.
Nothing creepy about that.
No, not at all. Completely friendly. We're all just friends here.
We're just watching you.
We're just watching you and listening to you, and
Yeah.
it's fine.
We like what you're doing.
It's fine. We like you. But yeah, as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.